Hello everyone, this is Gautham from third year BE Mechanical Engineering. Today in this video we are going to see about the properties, types and applications of the cutting fluid. In the first slide, the cutting fluid, the basic definition of the cutting fluid is the fluid which is used to remove the heat produced during the machining or the metal removal process. For the proper cutting operation, cutting fluid plays an important role. Cutting fluid is a type of coolant having lubricating properties as well, which is used in almost all the metalworking processes. During different machining process such as turning, drilling and milling. In machining process, the cutting fluids are used as per the requirements. The selection of cutting fluid depends on various factors such as cutting speed, work material, machining processes, finishing and cutting tool. According to it, majority cutting fluids are the kind of emulsion, that is oil in water emulsion, and remaining are all simple oils, gels, air and gases. Cutting fluids are made by animal fats, plants and vegetable oils, but most of them are made from petroleum distillation process. The properties of the cutting fluid in general are high thermal conductivity for cooling, because it need to dissipate the heat from the cutting processes. Then the next is good lubricating qualities. It is an important property of the cutting fluid because cutting fluids provides lubrication between the edge of the cutting tool and chip formed due to this heat generation, and friction between the cutting tool and work interface are reduced. Next is non-reactive, should not entail a fire hazard, because cutting fluid should not be a non-reactive in nature, because if it is a reactive, then it may damage the machine components or the tool used for the machining purpose. Next is viscosity. A proper viscous fluid is required as a cutting fluid. Different machining process requires different viscosity of fluid. So a proper viscous fluid should be supplied at the cutting position. Most of the time low viscous fluid is required because during machining continuous supply of cutting fluid is required. So we mostly use the low viscous cutting fluid. Then next is the cutting fluid should be non-corrosive. In this, a cutting fluid should be non-corrosive to work material and machine components. Mostly the main motive of adding mineral oil in water is to reduce corrosive action of cutting fluid. Water emulsion based on cutting fluids has good non-corrosive properties. Moving further, in these types of cutting fluids, the different types of cutting fluids are used during the metal cutting process. The main types of the cutting fluids are liquid type cutting fluid, semi-solid cutting fluid, gaseous and aerosols. At first, liquid type cutting fluid, it means an emulsion of oil in the water base. Because water alone is a good heat conductor, but we cannot use it as a cutting fluid because of its corrosive and non-lubricating action. To make proper cutting fluid, mineral oil are added. To make proper cutting fluid, mineral oil is added into the water, such as oil and kerosene are added to the water for the making a cutting fluid. Next, the semi-solid cutting fluid. uh, these are some kinds of gel and pastes which are used for some special applications where liquid type cutting fluids cannot work like such as drilling, boring, and tapping operations. uh, then they are expensive than liquid cutting fluid, but they use in less quantity, and no continuous supply is required for this. Then comes to next is gaseous. When we talk about the gaseous cutting fluid, compressed air is the best and cheapest cutting fluid, because atmospheric air is used as a cutting fluid. uh, Sometimes liquid is used with the compressed air, and a mist supply is provided at the cutting edge. This compressed air will blow away the chips and works as a good coolant, because air has a good thermal conductivity. Next comes to air cells. It means air with some small droplets of liquid, which makes as a cutting fluid. Uh, we use this where only liquid cutting fluids cannot work. The liquid is properly atmosed by the compressed air. The working with air cells has an adverse effect on the operator's health, so proper ventilation and good equipments are required while this type of cutting fluids are used. These are the types of cutting fluids. Next, we are going to see a small video on the cutting fluid. In that, the types of cutting fluid used is shown clearly, so you can get a further idea about the cutting fluid.
You should flood the part with coolant to keep the tool cool, though you could get by with it if you needed to. Flood coolant can remedy this situation, keeping both the chips clear and the tool well lubricated. It uses a combination of air and coolant to deliver a saturated mist at your cutter. This helps clear chips and lubricates.
At last, the applications of the cutting fluids are such as it is used as a coolant, lubrication, and flashing action. As a coolant, it is used to cool the cutting tool, chip, and job, because during the cutting process, machining process, the heat generator is removed through the coolant automatically. As a lubricant, it is either used for a movement of the tool on the job, or also reduce the cutting force. It means the friction of the tool is reduced. So it acts as a lubricant, also such as a coolant. As a flushing action, it is used to wash off the chips formed at the edges of the edges of the job, so it removes the chips away from it. So these are the main applications of the cutting fluid. Thank you everyone for watching this video.